Hello, Danny. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah. What's going on?
Just living the dream. How are you?
That's good to hear. I heard you earlier say that when you say secular, I'm presuming like people that don't believe in God or something like that, that those people couldn't have ought claims. I was wondering what the argument was for
Well, you can make an ought claim, but its justification foundation has no grounding. So anybody's ought claim is just as good as yours if you think that all morality is subjective.
Okay, what's the argument that let's say atheists can't be moral realist?
You can claim that you're a moral realist, but you need to give me a stance independent reason for how you're a moral realist that actually makes sense and is grounded.
No, but you see, you're making the claim that there can't be such a foundation on atheism. What's the argument for that?
I just told you, secularists that have a subjective moral foundation. So if anybody makes an ought claim who's a secularist, they're only appealing to themselves. What makes your ought claim better than theirs?
Well, first of all, that's just another claim that atheists or secularists are committed to subjectivism. I want the contradiction with the atheist worldview and a non-subjectivist moral framework.
You can't be a non-subjectivist if you don't have something to appeal to. It's all subjective.
That's another claim. That's just not an argument. Do you know what argument is?
Okay, so Danny, why don't you steel man my position?
You don't have a position. You're just making claims without arguments.
Okay. Do you need to have grounding of any kind to appeal to some kind of moral system? Does there need to be grounding in your estimation or not?
I don't want to change the subject. Do you have an argument for your claim or no?
I just made an argument. I made multiple arguments.
You don't know the difference.
You're not responding.
It seems like you don't know the difference between a claim and an argument.
It seems like you're stupid and can't respond. Can you respond and tell me how is your
when you don't know what an argument is?
Make an ought claim, Danny.
Again, I'm not changing the subject, right?
You're not going to claim. Yeah. Okay. Goodbye, Danny.
You're running away. Bye, loser.
There's no running away.
You are running away. You can't support your claim.
You won't respond.
You ran running just like Matt Dillahunty.
Secularists have a subjective moral framework. Yes or no?
That's a claim. Give me the argument.
I just asked you a question. No, that is the argument. All secularists.
Andrew, all questions are arguments, right?
That is the argument. Tell me how I can frame the argument.
Are questions arguments?
I just framed the argument. All secularists have a subjective moral framework.
That's a claim, not an argument. Do you know what an argument is?
Okay, explain how it's a claim absent argument.
Okay, so a claim is just a statement that needs to be supported. So when you're saying something like all secularists are subjectivists, that needs to be supported by a set of premises, okay, which leads to that conclusion, okay? This is logic 101.
So when I give you the premise one, secularists do not believe in any sort of deity or higher power. That's the first premise. Okay, premise two, because they don't believe in a deity or a higher power, all of their claims that they make are subjective, only from themselves. That's
what needs to be supported.
I just supported it with premise one. If you agree with premise one, then premise two logically follows.
No, that doesn't mean no.
How does it not?
How do you get premise two from premise one?
Because did you just say that premise one follows?
No, premise one, I accept premise one. It doesn't follow.
Then if you accept premise one, then what would you say premise two would be then?
Well, you said premise two is that they're committed.
No, answer my question. What would premise two be as a logical extension of premise one?
That you're just saying secularists don't believe in God. That's all there is to say about premise one.
So if secularists don't believe in God, you agree that that's true, right?
Yeah, that's by definition.
Okay, so if that's true, right, and premise two is if you don't believe in God, you don't have any grounding foundation for your morality.
That's what I want you to support. That's just a claim.
How could you?
How could you an argument? Do you know how to support claims?
Bro, if premise one is true, then premise two logically follows.
Premise two doesn't come from premise one. Right?
It does.
You're trying to infer that because secularists don't believe in God, that therefore
you're not even here to debate. You're just being
You don't even know how to debate. You don't know what an argument is.
You're just doing pedantry.
Why don't you learn what an argument is, right? It looks like you've never made one.
Well, I mean, I don't know, Danny. You still won't even engage with what I'm saying. You're just engaging in pedantry. That's it.
Look, the subject is that you can't show or support your claims. You can't show them to be true. You're trying to change the subject by asking me questions, right?
Danny, can I ask you a question? Are you a homosexual?
I'm bisexual.
Yeah, I kind of figured. All right, have a good day, Danny.
Again.
I'm not changing the subject. I was just curious.
Why did you want to talk about my sexuality? That's just changing the subject.
Goodbye, Danny. I was just curious, Danny. I was just wondering. Just wondering, Danny. That's all. These people absolutely refuse to actually engage in this. They just want to do pedantry. Like, you want a formal premise for an argument you understand. Yeah, but that's what I said. If God doesn't exist, then objective values and duties don't exist. It's subjective. So I didn't go ad hominem. I asked a question and he answered it. What's the ad hom? What's the ad hom? I didn't attack anybody's anything. That's the funniest thing. If you just ask a person a question, they claim that you're attacking them. I didn't attack him, but he won't actually engage with what's being said. Right? It's kind of typical of leftists, by the way. They engage in pedantry. That's all they can do. They won't actually engage with what you're saying. They understand what you're saying. They just won't engage in it. You didn't provide an argument for what? I gave you a premise. You said it was true. That's all we need. All you need to do is admit premise one is true. And then what follows is you have no objective morals at all. That's the problem, too, with the sophist, is that these sophists, they want to make sure that they never actually engage in what's being said. Instead, they want to engage in pedantic nonsense. Danny, I'll give you another chance if you're actually going to engage with what's being said. It's up to you. Like, I'll let you come back on, but you need to actually engage with what's being said.
I'll give you I'll let you control the conversation, but that is.
Hang on, Danny. Wait a second. You started early before you were actually up on the stream, so I didn't catch everything you said. So can you repeat what you said?
Yeah, I'll let you control the conversation on the pain of me being kicked. So where do you want to go within the conversation? Because you know where I want to go. Well,
let's start with this. Is religion good for the world? And is it good for America?
I think some cases it is, some cases it's not. If I had to place bets, I think overall it's good.
Why? Why is it good?
Well, I think that's going to depend on each person or society. I don't really think there's like a universal theory of it, but it's one thing. In America, we have definitely a majority religion, right? There is a religion which is here in America. Do you think it's good that it's here? I really don't know. I'm fine with saying yes. I could be corrected.
Okay, so if religion is good for America, what do you think are the qualities of it that are good?
Well, I think this life is kind of harsh. I think the idea of an afterlife, and if someone that loves you and motivates you to be the kind of person you want to be, I think those things are good. That would be some reasons.
Okay, let me ask you this: do you believe that there is a God, or do you think that that's all fake?
I don't believe in God. I believe God does not exist.
Okay, fair enough. So let me ask you this question. It's the same question I was asking Matt Dillahunty. If you could lie to people, lie about something, and it ended up with good results for the people who were lied to, would you do it?
I have done that before.
Yeah, you have done that before. So if this is all a lie and you think it's a lie, but you think the outcomes of the religious are better than the outcomes of the secularists, shouldn't you lie to them?
That's going to be a case-by-case basis. Yeah. But generally, yeah, I do. I have people that I talk to, whether it be my own family members or friends, that I say, look, you should just be a Christian. Because it seems like Christianity for them is their hope, meaning, and purpose.
So shouldn't atheists, if you're getting better outcomes out of people by them believing in a higher power, shouldn't atheists go ahead and just lie and also say that there is a God, even if it's not true, because it affirms that faith and creates better outcomes?
Well, I'm not sure we have to lie. We don't have to engage with people that are not interested in like debating about such a thing. I don't think atheists should be militant. I think against certain political things, maybe that's fine. But generally speaking, if someone really puts a lot of stock in their religious commitments in terms of their hope, meaning, and purpose, I think we should leave those people alone.
So, but if you have atheists who, let's say, have radio shows and things like this, where they are very militant and they are trying to convince people out of their religion, wouldn't that be a bad thing?
And I mean, it just depends on the kind of people they're engaging with. Usually, the average Christian, average religious person really doesn't care too much about debating about their views. I think that to pursue that demographic is a mistake, but the kind of more apologetics type people, I don't think those people are very good for society.
Why not?
Well, in a lot of cases, they're either pretentious, and that bothers me. I guess it's I'm thinking of like the Darth Dawkins, the Zen Shapiros, those kind of people. I think they're obnoxious. They're mean.
Yeah, but I mean, come on. Compared to secularists are also obnoxious and mean. Like anything that you could levy against a Christian apologist, it's equal in a secular kind of like parallel is just as valid, right?
No, I agree.
Yeah. So the question becomes, if the outcomes are better for people who are religious, and they are better for sure. On average, we're not everybody, it's not a monolith, but on average, they're way better for people. Mm-hmm. Shouldn't secularists then kind of move towards affirming that, since even though they think it's a lie, the outcomes for most people are better? Wouldn't that kind of line up with their worldview pretty well?
Yeah, this is a pretty serious empirical claim that I haven't really well researched, but I'll tell you my intuition. My intuition is that religious commitment is important to people. It's part of their identity. I think we should be careful as secularists or atheists in terms of how fast we displace that if we want to displace it. I'm not interested. When I talk to religious people, I'm very rarely wanting to convince them. I do have this tendency to convince them that certain arguments are no good, or that the problem of evil is a problem, or whatever philosophical argument is good. But it does make me uncomfortable if people just, if I influence people away from what they take to be their hope, meaning, and purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, because it obviously has a negative effect, right? So like some examples of this, secularists, for instance, they have higher mental health issue rates, right, across the board. They also have a problem with reproduction in atheism. Reproducing yourself has obviously become more and more problematic because it's a more materialist worldview. And if you think about it, what is your incentive as a atheist to have a child from a materialist perspective?
Okay, well, I wanted to address, so those, I haven't looked into the empirical, like what correlates with the secular or the nun group in terms of mental illness. I will say that I attribute a lot of the healthy stuff to religion, to community building in churches. I think that kind of stuff is very important. And I think the secular community, especially workers groups, can learn a lot from religious communities and how, the kind of more healthy churches.
Sure. Well, what forms those communities, though, is the belief in this higher power. And absent that, from a materialist worldview, what is the incentive exactly? For instance, when I ask you this question, what is the incentive of a materialist to have a child in the year 2023? If you can have the sex without the procreation, like the fun part of the procreation, right? And then the child's going to be a net burden to you for the rest of your life, essentially. There's no real material gain. They don't even take care of you when you're old now. You just get put in a home. What is the actual incentive for them to reproduce?
I don't really think there's an answer to that. I think it just depends on the society. I mean, you have secular societies that reproduce a lot. For instance,
They're all under the rate. They're all under replacement rates. Every single one of them.
That's true currently, but what about the last half of the 20th century in China?
Nope. They're same. Well, okay. So first of all, I wouldn't say that China is a secularist society, but they kind of fell.
Yes, they are.
They kind of fell. No, they just replaced religion with the state.
Is that not secularist?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I think that you can make I think that you can make a religion, like if you worship Kim Jong-un, for instance, wouldn't that be a religion?
I mean, it depends. If you want to call it a religion, I mean, the point is that it doesn't have the features of divinity, right?
If you believe that Kim Jong-un, well, not Kim Jong-un, but like, let's say Kim Jong-il actually created the hand grenade out of a pineapple, which I'm not kidding. There's documents that claim this, right? And that he has kind of divine powers, just like emperors of old in Asian culture, for instance, were considered to be divine themselves. So it does have the aspect of divinity.
Well, look, if you want to define religion that way, then, I mean, atheism can be a religion. I mean, maybe that's what you think. But I thought we were talking about belief in God, a belief in a non-natural thing that's worthy of worship. But then now I'm kind of confused about what you're talking about, but I don't know anything about North Korea in terms of birth rates. I'm talking about China in the last, would you say China was secular in the last half of the 20th century?
No, I think that they made divinity out of human beings. So if you look at Mao, for instance, he was divinely worshipped. If you look at most of the Chinese leaders moving in to what became that one-child policy, I think that they did worship him as divine. But let's assume for a second that they didn't, right? And it was just a secular policy where they just kind of looked at the numbers from a scientific standpoint and said, oh, no, we're going to be overrun with humanity. Well, they were wrong, right? They were wrong. And ultimately, this is going to lead to the potential halving of their entire population by the middle of this century.
Okay, now I'm confused. I thought you were talking about materialism, or as in like, naturalism, a kind of something that's synonymous with atheism. So what do you mean by materialism?
Just that your value, if we're talking, I'm not talking about the naturalist philosophical worldview. Oh, what I'm saying is that absent divine worship, you have nothing, there's nothing left to you except the material world, material goods, material things. And so if that's true, and that's what you believe, and everything is kind of based around your own material condition, then this becomes a very selfish worldview very quickly, doesn't it?
Well, first of all, I don't want to conflate whatever you just said with atheism. Atheists can believe in weird stuff. I mean, I myself am not a materialist, but I'm an atheist. So I thought you were using that term synonymously with atheism. But
I kind of am, but I don't know what you mean by that. By like atheists can believe in some weird stuff. Like you mean that there's atheists who? Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just wondering. Look, I don't think materialism or atheism license certain values. I don't think theism does either. I don't think either view does. I think you have to get more specific about the view, right? So Christianity has certain values. Buddhism has certain values. Secular humanism has certain values. But atheism and theism, I don't think, imply any particular set of values.
I agree.
Okay. So what are you trying to convince me of exactly?
Well, what I'm trying to convince you of is that if we now, right this second, I would say that most Western nations, most of them, do not rule their societies from a theistic perspective, but rather they kind of rule their societies from an empirical material perspective. Kind of the most good for the most people, right?
So to understand what you're saying that right now, mostly in the West, there are no, they don't rule from a kind of theistic point of view. Is that what
right? They rule from a more secular perspective. And what I would say is that the societies are decaying and they're sickly. They actually are doing poorly in comparison to the theist societies because of this lack of value structure.
Okay, well, look, let me just grant you, I don't actually believe it. I haven't done a lot of research on what like the empirical benefits of a secular government versus a non-secular government. it might be the case that humans are better off with on theocracy. Now, I don't believe that, but that doesn't make it true, right? I think you're wanting to highlight the practical benefits of religion, which I think there are, and then say that, well, maybe even if it's false, you're trying to provide an argument for why atheists might even want to support religion. Is that what, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm not totally. You see, I'm not an anti-theist. Okay. My parents.
But hang on. I understand what you're saying. Okay. You're right, Andrew. There obviously are practical benefits, and I would want people to engage in those practical benefits. But if you have these militant atheists who are out there doing everything that they can from the loudest microphones that they can possibly find to convince people away from that worldview, even to the detriment of those people, don't you think that that's problematic?
Yeah, I'm no fan of Aaron Ra and Matt Dillahunty and these characters. I'm not really a fan of anti-theists.
Yeah. Because they're making the claim that life would be better without this, right? Isn't that really ultimately what they're saying? I'm
not even sure that's true. I agree with you that I don't think it's true that, if we just get rid of religion, we'll be better off. I don't believe that. I don't know. I mean, it could be the case we need it. I mean, I haven't really, I'm not so interested in those questions. I am, but haven't done a lot of research. Now, one thing I am against, I have political values. For instance, I'm for gay marriage. And so I'm against certain religious commitments that dispose people to vote against that. So that changes the game a little bit. But bracketing.
So let's focus on that one for just a second. Okay. We'll just say G marriage for the purpose of TikTok. Do you mind doing that for me?
No problem.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that. And by the way, this is a much better good faith exchange. I appreciate this very much. So if we're focusing on G marriage here, what if you could demonstrate that there was societal value? More people, in other words, had greater benefit by keeping marriage a sacrament rather than allowing it to not be a sacrament. If that could be demonstrated, would your mind change on that particular value?
So this is some kind of consequentialist view that if we banned G marriage and we enshrined marriage in kind of the way that you have in mind, that would lead to a better utilitarian outcome.
Yeah, maximum utility for people, or at least better utility. Wouldn't even say maximum, but much better utility. Would you then be okay with removing that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is then all I really have to do is give you a demonstration that this is bad for society, or it's mostly bad for society.
Now, if you could show that G marriage is overall bad for society in the sense that there's more that there'll be more pain in society for a greater number of people than the contrary, then you have my attention. But I don't always go with that calculus, but generally I do.
So you use a hedonic calculus?
Not always. For instance, there are some things that I'm just against, period. And obviously there's going to be thresholds, but for instance, if we had enslaved 5% of the population and that led to better, happier outcomes, I would be against that. There's going to be a threshold. I'm somewhat of a particularist. It really depends on the situation.
That sounds more like threshold deontology almost, or threshold utilitarianism. People could make principles, that match my views. I don't even know what those principles would be. From all I'm saying is that my knowledge about what I want for society, or what I would support or wouldn't support, is very contextualized. I don't think our moral lives are very tidy. I don't think our societal conditions are very clear. And so if we're talking about a particular issue, I think the context really matters for me. Yeah, I think that's fair. So if we were to re-engage on this conversation down the road on this particular value, and I was able to kind of make this demonstration through the empirical evidence that you value so much, that society is better off without this particular institution, you would be swayed into changing your opinion on it?
Yeah, let me give an example of what might change my opinion. So I think, for instance, depopulation is a problem, right?
Yeah, it's a big problem.
I do agree that that's an issue. Okay.
Yep.
Now, of course, I don't believe this, but if you could show that if we banned G marriage, that our birth rates would rise above 2 for the next 150 years, that would be something that would weigh, and I would want to, I would take more seriously such a ban.
Yeah, but you would have to. There wouldn't just be one, right? There wouldn't just be one factor. There would be, dozens, if not hundreds, of factors which would go into you. I mean, you would have to measure how human beings perceive this. If sacramental marriage leads to better outcomes, if it leads to better population, if it leads to all these things. So you would kind of take all these into a multi-factor. And as you know, if you're using the hedonic calculus, we kind of start with this arbitrary set of what we value utility as being anyway, right? So I don't know what you value utility as being, if it's happiness or well-being or some blend of both. I'm not sure exactly what you consider utility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, happiness is important. Well-being seems to be just what I think is best for that person, and when I'm also considering what they want or their goals as well. So it doesn't really amount to anything really substantive. So you'd have to assume a lot of my values, but I mean, it's not like, these questions, these political questions for me, you see, I'm more of a philosophy person. Of course, politics and philosophy do get along, but
sometimes you get along.
Well, you have to use one for the other. I think at some point. But yeah, I mean, to me, a lot of these questions are empirical, so they require studies and you have to actually, the philosopher likes to sit in the chair. For these kind of problems, you got to look into how the world is. And I haven't really done that very much. I only have my experiences and the kind of common sense conclusion.
Well, let's revisit this conversation down the road, and maybe we can make better heads or tails. But I actually enjoyed having it with you, Danny, and I appreciate you calling in.
All right. You have a good one.